"You're being dramatic about me dancing with other guys," she said after grinding on 3 different men at the club. I left her there, packed her things, and changed the locks that same night. She came home hungover the next morning to find all her stuff by the door and a note. "Dance with whoever you want, just not in my apartment anymore." Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. I think deep down I always knew I was the safe option for Chloe. I was the guy who paid the rent on our 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I was the guy who made sure her car insurance was renewed on time, who cooked dinner when she was tired, and who listened to her vent about her dead-end marketing job for hours without complaining. I was stable, I was reliable, and according to Chloe, I was sweet. But in the modern dating world, sweet is often just a polite synonym for boring. Chloe was 24, 5 years younger than me, and she was terrified of missing out. She had this frantic energy about her, a constant need to be perceived, validated, and desired by strangers. She lived her life through the lens of Instagram stories and TikTok trends. When we were alone in the apartment, things were great. She was affectionate, funny, and grounded. But the moment we stepped into public or the moment she got around her single friends, she shifted. She became a performer and I was just a prop she dragged along to hold her purse while she shined. The friction had been building for months. It was small things at first. She'd post thirst traps on social media, photos of her in bikinis I'd never seen, captioned with lyrics about being untamable. When I asked her about it, she'd roll her eyes. "It's just for the algorithm, Mark. You're so insecure. It's not like I'm actually doing anything with these guys in the DMs." I let it slide. I wanted to be the cool, supportive boyfriend. I didn't want to be the controlling older guy stifling her youth. I swallowed my gut instinct, which was screaming that a woman in a committed relationship shouldn't be soliciting attention from hundreds of random men. Then came Jessica. Jessica was Chloe's best friend from college, newly single after getting dumped by a finance bro, and on a warpath to reclaim her hot girl summer in the middle of October. Jessica was toxic. She was the kind of miserable person who needed everyone around her to be miserable too, just so she didn't feel alone in her chaos. "You have to come out with us tonight," Chloe said, standing in the doorway of our bathroom while I shaved. It was Friday night. I had worked a 60-hour week at the logistics firm I managed. All I wanted was takeout and a movie. "Babe, I'm beat," I said, rinsing the razor. "Can't you and Jessica just go? I trust you." "No, you have to come," she shed, putting on her puppy dog face. "Jessica says you never come out anymore. She thinks you're controlling me by keeping me at home. Plus, it's a new club downtown. VIP entry, please, just for a few hours. I want to show you off." That was the hook. She wanted to show me off. Or so she said. I sighed, looking at my tired reflection in the mirror. I loved her, I really did. And I convinced myself that maybe I was being a bit of a hermit. Maybe I did need to put in more effort to fit into her world. "Fine," I said, "but I'm driving and we're not staying until 4 a.m. She squealed, hugged me tight, and ran off to get ready. She spent 2 hours on her hair and makeup. She put on a dress that was less of a garment and more of a suggestion, tight, black and cut dangerously low. She looked incredible objectively, but as we walked to the car, I noticed she was already texting Jessica furiously, a smirk on her face that I couldn't quite read. I didn't know it then, but I was driving myself to my own execution. The club was called Verdict, which feels ironic in hindsight. It was exactly the kind of place I hated. Subterranean, smelling of expensive cologne and cheap desperation, with bass so heavy it rattled your teeth. The air was thick with fog and sweat. The moment we walked past the bouncer and into the main room, Chloe underwent a transformation. It was instantaneous. She dropped my hand. Her posture changed from relaxed to arched and poised. She wasn't walking. She was prowling. We met up with Jessica and 2 other girls I didn't know near the bar. Jessica looked me up and down with a sneer disguised as a smile. "Look who finally let himself off the leash," Jessica shouted over the music. "Ha ha," I said, forcing a smile. "Good to see you too, Jess." Chloe didn't defend me. She just grabbed a shot of tequila from the tray Jessica was holding, threw it back, and screamed, "Whoa!" before pulling her friends toward the dance floor. "Coming?" she asked me, but she was already walking away. She didn't wait for an answer. I followed them, feeling like a chaperone at a high school prom. I stood on the edge of their circle, holding my beer, watching them dance. At first, it was fine. They were dancing with each other, laughing, taking selfies with the flash on. I relaxed a little. I nodded my head to the beat, trying to look like I was having a good time. Then the dynamic shifted. A group of guys, probably in their early 20s, wearing unbuttoned shirts and gold chains, drifted toward them. They were sharks smelling blood. Usually this is where a girlfriend signals I'm taken. A glance at me, a hand on my arm, a polite step back. Chloe did none of that. When a guy with bleached hair and a sleeve tattoo approached her, she didn't step back. She smiled. She flipped her hair. She turned around so her back was to him and she started to move. I stiffened. I took a sip of my beer, tasting nothing but bile. She's just dancing, I told myself. Don't be the jealous guy. Don't be the guy Jessica says you are. But then the guy's hands went to her hips. I watched, frozen as his hands settled on the waist of the woman I planned to propose to next year, and she didn't push them away. She leaned back into him. She grounded against him, matching the rhythm of the heavy bass. He leaned down and whispered something in her ear, and she threw her head back and laughed. A loud performative laugh that I knew was fake but aimed at feeding his ego. I set my beer down on a nearby table. My heart wasn't racing. Surprisingly, my pulse had slowed down. A cold, numbing clarity was washing over me. I walked into the middle of the dance floor. I tapped Chloe on the shoulder. She spun around, looking annoyed that her performance had been interrupted. Her eyes were glazed, pupil dilated. "What?" she mouthed. "Can we talk?" I shouted over the noise, gesturing toward the quieter area near the bar. She huffed, rolled her eyes at the guy she was grinding on as if to say, "Can you believe this?" and followed me. When we got to the edge of the floor, I turned to her. I tried to keep my voice even. "Chloe, you're grinding on that guy. His hands were all over you. That's not cool. I'm standing right there." She looked at me with genuine, baffling condescension. She crossed her arms, pushing her chest up, looking around to see if anyone was watching us fight. "Oh my God, Mark," she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "We are just dancing. It's a club. That's what people do here. Why do you have to make everything so weird?" "I'm not making it weird," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I'm asking you to respect our relationship. You're rubbing your ass against a stranger's crotch while your boyfriend watches. In what world is that okay?" She stepped closer, getting in my face. I could smell the tequila on her breath. "You are being so dramatic," she spat out. "It's harmless fun. I'm allowed to have fun, Mark. I'm not a nun. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends. You're just insecure because you don't know how to let loose." "I'm insecure?" I asked, a dark amusement bubbling up in my chest. "Yes, you're suffocating me." She threw her hands up. "If you can't handle me dancing, then maybe you should just go stand in the corner and wait until I'm done. Or go home. I don't care, but stop ruining my night." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the smeared eyeliner. I saw the desperate need for validation in her eyes. I saw the way she kept glancing back toward the dance floor, terrified that the bleached hair guy might lose interest if she was gone too long. I realized in that second that she didn't love me. She loved the safety I provided. She loved the apartment. She loved the bills being paid. But she didn't respect me. And without respect, loyalty is just a waiting game until something better comes along. "Okay," I said. She blinked, surprised by my sudden surrender. "Okay, you're right," I said calmly. "I am being dramatic. You go have fun. Dance with whoever you want." A smug smile spread across her face. She thought she had won. She thought she had browbeaten me into submission just like she always did. She thought I was going to go buy her a drink and stand in the corner like a good little puppy. "Thank you," she said, patting my cheek condescendingly. "Lewin up, babe. I'll come find you later." She turned around immediately, sashaying back toward the dance floor. I watched her go. I watched her walk straight up to the bleached hair guy. I watched her grab his lapels. And then I watched her grind on him even harder than before, looking back at me for a split second to make sure I saw it. She was punishing me. She was showing me that she could do whatever she wanted, and I would take it. She began moving between 3 different guys in that circle, laughing, touching arms, letting them spin her around. She was in her element. She looked free. I checked my watch. It was 11:45 p.m. I didn't feel angry anymore. The anger had evaporated, replaced by the clinical efficiency I used at work when a contract was violated. I turned my back on her. I walked to the bar, paid my open tab, and tipped the bartender $20. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. I opened the Uber app. I didn't text her. I didn't say goodbye. I simply ceased to exist in her world. I had a busy night ahead of me. Packing up an entire apartment takes time, and I wanted to be done before the alcohol wore off. The Uber ride home was silent. I sat in the back seat watching the city lights blur past the window. The driver asked if I'd had a good night, and I just said, yes. A clarifying one. The first thing I did was pull out my phone. I opened the location sharing app we used for safety. I swiped left on Chloe's face and hit stop sharing. A small pop-up asked if I was sure. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. When I unlocked the apartment door, the silence hit me. Usually, the silence of an empty apartment made me feel lonely. It was a reminder of the hours waiting for her to come home. Tonight, it felt different. It felt like peace. It felt like I had regained territory that had been occupied by enemy forces. I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I didn't pace the floor wondering if I was making a mistake. The adrenaline of this switch flip was still coursing through me, turning my emotions into a checklist. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a box of heavy-duty black trash bags. I started in the bathroom. Her toothbrush, her endless array of creams, the hair straightener she always left plugged in. I swept them all into the bag with a clinical detachment. I wasn't smashing things. I was just relocating matter. I moved to the bedroom. I opened her side of the closet. I pulled clothes off hangers and armfuls, dresses, coats, the jeans she wore when she told me I was boring, the lingerie she bought but never wore for me, into the bags. Shoes were tossed in a separate box I found in the utility closet. I stripped the bed sheets. She had slept on them. I didn't want them anymore. Into the laundry chute. I'd buy new ones tomorrow. Egyptian cotton, the expensive kind, she said, was a waste of money. It was 12:30 a.m. when I Googled 24-hour locksmith. I found a guy with a 4.8 star rating who promised to be there in 20 minutes for a late-night emergency fee. Is it a break-in? The dispatcher asked on the phone. No, I said, staring at the growing pile of black bags in the hallway. It's a breakout. The locksmith arrived at 1 a.m. He was a burly guy named S. He took one look at the bags in the hallway, then looked at me. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded, a silent acknowledgement of a universal male experience. You want the deadbolt changed too? S asked, pulling a drill from his belt. Everything, I said. I want a key that has never existed before tonight. While S drilled out the core of the lock, a sound that was strangely soothing, like a dentist removing a rotten tooth. I finished the packing. I moved everything into the hallway of our building. It was a secure building, so her stuff wouldn't get stolen, but it was definitely humiliating. A mountain of black trash bags, 3 cardboard boxes, and a yoga mat leaning against the wall. I went back inside and grabbed a piece of printer paper and a thick Sharpie. I thought about writing a long letter explaining why. I thought about detailing every time she made me feel small, every time she compared me to her friends' exciting boyfriends. But that would imply she deserved an explanation. That would imply this was a negotiation. I wrote 2 sentences. Dance with whoever you want, just not in my apartment anymore. I taped the note to the largest bag right at eye level. So finished up. I paid him $300. He handed me 2 shiny new keys. They felt heavy in my palm. They felt like ownership. Good luck, brother, S said as he packed up his tools. Thanks, S. I think the luck just turned. I locked the door from the inside, slid the chain into place, and poured myself a glass of whiskey. I sat in the living room for 10 minutes enjoying the absolute stillness. No drama, no drunk texts, no waiting. I went to bed at 2 a.m. and fell asleep instantly. I woke up at 10:30 a.m. naturally, no alarm. The sun was streaming through the blinds in a way I hadn't appreciated in months. I made a pot of coffee and scrambled some eggs. I ate breakfast at the table, listening to a podcast, completely unbothered by the fact that my ex-girlfriend was currently homeless. At 11:15 a.m., the performance began. I heard the elevator ding in the hallway, then the heavy footsteps, then the silence. The pause where I knew she was staring at the pile of bags, then the sound of a key jamming into the lock. Scrape, jiggle, shove. It didn't turn. Scrape, jiggle, jiggle. What the? I heard her mumble through the door. Then came the pounding, a fist hammering against the wood. Mark, are you in there? The key isn't working. Open the door. I took a slow sip of coffee, walked to the door, and undid the deadbolt. I opened it about 4 in, keeping the security chain taut. Chloe was standing there in the harsh fluorescent light of the hallway. She looked like a wreck. Her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. Her hair was a bird's nest of tangles, and she was still wearing that black dress, which now looked cheap and wrinkled in the daylight. She smelled like stale vodka and regret. She looked at me through the crack, her eyes wide with confusion and panic. Then she gestured wildly at the bags behind her. "Mark, what is this? Why are my clothes in trash bags? Is this a joke?" I looked her up and down, my expression completely neutral. "It's not a joke, Chloe. It's a move out." "A move out?" She let out a hysterical disbelief laugh. "Are you serious? You locked me out? I've been calling you all morning. I woke up at Jessica's and I was so worried because you just vanished." "I didn't vanish," I said calmly. "I left. There's a difference." "You left me at the club," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Who does that? You abandoned me." "You weren't abandoned," I corrected her. "You were occupied. Last I saw, you had 3 guys keeping you company. I didn't want to interrupt your fun." "You said I was being dramatic, remember?" Her face flushed. She tried to push the door open, but the chain held firm. "Mark, let me in. I feel like I need a shower. We can talk about this inside." "No," I said, "we can't." She stared at me, the reality starting to sink in. She looked at the note taped to the bag again, reading it properly this time. Tears started to well up in her eyes, the weaponized tears she always used when she needed to get her way. "Babe, please," she whimpered, softening her voice. "I was just drunk. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just dancing. You know I love you. Why are you doing this over one stupid night?" "It wasn't one night," I said. "It was the disrespect. You looked me in the eye, told me I was embarrassing you, and then turned around to grind on another man. You made a choice, Chloe. You chose the attention of strangers over my respect." "I'm sorry," she cried, wiping her nose. "I'm sorry. Okay, I won't do it again. Just let me in. All my stuff is out here. My neighbors are going to see." "They probably already have," I said. "And you're right. All your stuff is out there. I made sure I got everything, even the charger you left by the couch." "Where am I supposed to go?" she screamed, the sadness flipping back to anger instantly. "I have nowhere to go. My parents are in Florida. Jessica's couch is tiny. You can't just kick me out. I live here." "You lived here," I said, using the past tense deliberately. "You lived here when you were my girlfriend, but my girlfriend wouldn't treat me like a backup plan in a nightclub, so you must not be her. You are such an—" she spat, slamming her hand against the doorframe. "Over dancing, you are an insecure, controlling, pathetic little man. Those guys last night were right about you." There it was. The mask slipped. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "If they were right and they're so great, why don't you go ask one of them if you can crash at their place? You seemed pretty comfortable with them last night. Maybe the guy with the neck tattoo has a spare room." Her mouth fell open. She didn't have a comeback for that. "Goodbye, Chloe," I said. "Mark, wait." I shut the door. I threw the deadbolt. I listened for a moment. I heard her kick the door once. Then I heard the sound of her sliding down the wall, sobbing into the silence of the hallway. I walked back to the kitchen, poured another cup of coffee, and sat back down. The eggs were still warm, and for the first time in 2 years, I didn't have to wonder if I was enough. I knew I was. She was just no longer welcome to experience it. The fallout was immediate, but it didn't play out the way Chloe expected. I learned later that she spent an hour hauling those black trash bags down to the lobby by herself, crying loudly in the hope that a neighbor would intervene and shame me into opening the door. None did. The doorman, a guy named Henry, whom I tipped well every Christmas, apparently watched her struggle with a detached sympathy, held the door open for her, and wished her a good day. She ended up at Jessica's place. Of course, by that evening, the smear campaign had begun. I was sitting on my couch reading a book in the blissful quiet when my phone started buzzing. It was a notification from Instagram. Chloe had blocked me, but she hadn't blocked my brother or our mutual friends. She posted a photo of herself, eyes red, mascara running, looking like the victim of a natural disaster. The caption read, "Thrown out on the street like garbage by the person who was supposed to love me." Narcissists always show their true colors eventually. Homeless and heartbroken, but I will rise. Broken heart # survivor # toxic. I felt a flash of irritation, but I didn't comment. I didn't text her to defend myself. I knew that in the court of public opinion, silence is often mistaken for guilt. But I also knew that engaging with crazy only makes you look crazy. The next day, the narrative started to crack. A mutual friend of ours, Dave, sent me a text. Dave had been at the club that night on the periphery of the group. Dave saw her post. Rough stuff, man. But honestly, I saw what she was doing at verdict. I'm surprised you waited that long to bail. You good? Then a video surfaced. One of Jessica's friends had posted a story from the club that night tagging Chloe. It was still up. I watched it through a burner account. It showed Chloe on the dance floor. Not just dancing, but practically climbing a guy I didn't know. She was whispering in his ear, her hand on the back of his neck, laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. I screen recorded it just in case, but I never needed to use it. The karma that hit Chloe wasn't some grand cosmic lightning bolt. It was the slow, grinding reality of adult life without a safety net. I heard through the grapevine that living with Jessica was a nightmare. Jessica was fun for the night out, but as a roommate, she was a disaster. Her apartment was a chaotic mess of dirty dishes and cat hair. There was no one to cook dinner, no one to pay for the Uber Eats, no one to fix the Wi-Fi when it went down. Chloe's freedom turned out to be expensive. Without my income covering the rent and utilities, Chloe was drowning. She worked a mid-level marketing job that barely covered her credit card minimums, let alone rent in the city. She tried to lean on the club guys, the ones she claimed were so much more fun than me. She went on dates, a lot of them, but the bad boys she fetishized treated her exactly how bad boys treat desperate women. They slept with her, ghosted her, or asked her to split the bill at Applebee's. The guy with the bleached hair from that night, he apparently blocked her number after she asked if she could crash at his place for a few days. She wasn't a high-value woman to them. She was just a girl with baggage and no apartment. Meanwhile, I was flourishing. It's amazing how much money and energy you save when you aren't constantly trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. I got a promotion at work. I started going to the gym at 6 a.m. because I wasn't being kept awake by late-night arguments. I reconnected with old friends I drifted away from because Chloe didn't like them. I was happy, and I think that's what hurt her the most. It had been 6 weeks since the locks were changed. I was walking out of my gym on a Tuesday evening, feeling the good kind of sore. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I had my headphones in, listening to a playlist that didn't include any of her favorite songs. Mark, I stopped. I knew the voice, but it sounded thinner than I remembered. Chloe was leaning against the side of my car. She looked diminished. That's the only word for it. The frantic manic energy was gone. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie, clothes that looked comfortable but worn. She looked tired. Her roots were showing, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like the girl I fell in love with 3 years ago before the social media obsession took over. For a second, I felt a pang of phantom limp pain, the instinct to ask if she was okay to offer to help. Then I remembered the guy's hands on her waist. The switch stayed flipped. I pulled my headphones out. "Chloe, you're blocking my door." "I just wanted to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She wasn't aggressive this time. She wasn't the girl banging on the door screaming about entitlement. She was the girl who realized she had made a catastrophic error. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, hitting the unlock button on my fob. The lights of my car flashed, illuminating her face. "Please, Mark, just 5 minutes." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. "I miss you, I miss us. Living with Jessica is a nightmare. I hate it. I hate my life right now." "That sounds difficult," I said, my tone flat. "But it has nothing to do with me." "How can you say that?" Tears started to spill over. "We were together for 3 years. You can't just erase that because I made one mistake. I was drunk, I was stupid. I haven't had a drink since that night, I promise." She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand felt cold. "I realized something, Mark. None of those guys compare to you. They're boys. You're a man. You took care of me. I took that for granted, and I am so sorry. I want to come home." I looked down at her hand on my arm. I didn't pull away violently. I just stepped back, causing her hand to drop into the empty air between us. "You don't miss me, Chloe," I said. "You miss the apartment. You miss the stability. You miss having someone to clean up your messes." "That's not true. I love you." "No." I shook my head. "You don't. Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have humiliated me to impress strangers. You called me dramatic for asking for basic respect. You told me I was embarrassing you. I looked her dead in the eyes. I wanted her to hear this. I saw you that night, Chloe. I saw who you really are when you think there are no consequences. You advertised yourself to every man in that room. You put yourself on display like you were for sale. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I was just... And the thing is, I interrupted, my voice calm and final, I don't buy products that offer free samples to everyone. I'm not interested in the clearance rack. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The brutality of the rejection, not out of anger but out of value, stunned her. You wanted the exciting life, I said, opening my car door. You wanted the club. You wanted the guys who didn't play it safe. Now you have them. You got exactly what you asked for. Mark, please, she whispered, a desperate, broken sound. I have no one. I got into the driver's seat. I looked at her through the open window one last time. You have yourself, I said. That's what you always wanted to focus on anyway. I closed the door. I started the engine. I didn't look in the rearview mirror as I drove away. I didn't need to see her standing alone in the parking lot to know she was crying. I turned my music back up. I had a steak waiting in the fridge and a quiet, empty apartment to cook it in. It was going to be a great night. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.